Go right on ahead.
All right, thank you, Ben. At this time, I'd like to call to order the public hearing. Purpose of this meeting is to obtain the public's input concerning ordinance 3-21. This is to rezone the real property located at 309 Lindy Lane Northwest, parcel number 9205115, from park and institution, P&I, to single-family residential R50. So, or Ben, can you please call the roll?
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Soretta?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Stroya?
Here.
And Member Peters.
Here.
7 present.
Okay. Well, there you go. If you look at your screen, this is the parcel we are talking about. At this time, I will open it up for public comment. Let's start with those in favor of the zone change.
The only person we had sign up to speak tonight is the church themselves.
Oh, okay.
So, Darlene, when you're ready, introduce yourself and go ahead.
Okay, my name is Darlene Melovicus from Zion Lutheran Church there on Lindy Lane. The parcel had our parsonage on it and was used by our ministers, and then we had it for a mentally retarded 4 adult gentlemen, and now we had it empty and we've had a regular resident renting it. So we're trying to get all our ducks in order, and we realized that this was not zone residential. We didn't realize that it was park and institutional, so we just wanted to make sure that the property and everything was done correctly. So we had it surveyed and divided off, and then went to zoning for it. So, and now we're with you guys.
Okay. Ben, do you have any other background on this?
What would you like?
The Zoning Board of Appeals, they
This would be Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
This actually came to us from Planning Commission. They applied to City Council on behalf of the church,
Okay.
and they did recommend that we enact this change.
Okay.
Are you gonna keep it as rental income or sell the piece off once it's zoned correctly?
No, right now we're planning on still keeping it as a rental. I can't say down the road, but as of right now, we're going to keep it as a rental.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions from council?
Nope. Nope.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, we will move forward with this. And at this point, well, I guess we'll adjourn the public hearing. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Revolt moves. Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Okay, we will move directly into the Committee of the Whole meeting. At this time, I'd like to call to order North Canton Committee of the Whole, March 1st, 2021. The time is 6:34. Ben, will you please call the roll?
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Soretta?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Stroya?
Here.
And Member Peters.
Here.
7 present.
All right, first up, Community and Economic Development, Chairman Revolt. The floor is.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've got a number of pieces of legislation. It looks like a long agenda tonight, but actually, items A through J pertain to the establishment of the property maintenance code, which you have in your packets. We are going to create a new property maintenance code. We're going to establish a Department of Development Services to help manage that with a new structure. We're going to establish a property maintenance review board to oversee the administration and appeals. And we're going to make a change in the engineering department by removing the Division of Permits and Inspection as part of the reorganization. What I'd like to do tonight is, rather than go through the property maintenance code page by page, I'd just like to set the stage for it. Sort of historically, we have addressed property maintenance through a number of sections or chapters in our revised code or codified ordinances. This is kind of a Rube Goldberg approach that historically or at least initially, probably didn't have to work that well because we didn't really have any problems. But all of us know today we're in a different world in terms of our structures and legal enforcement. And one of the advantages this new code has is that it eliminates this patchwork and provides us with a comprehensive document. And not only does it address residential properties, but also commercial properties as well. And I think this reflects, and I'll turn it over in a minute to the administration, Marty, but we've got a much clearer set of standards than we've had in the past. This has been reviewed by legal counsel. We believe it is enforceable, and importantly, it sets due process in place for individuals who may fall subject to the code. I think it's important to understand that Marty was able to draw many standard regulations from outside. For example, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, if you look on one of the back pages of your document, you'll see where many of these standards have come from. American Society for Testing and Materials, the International Code Council, National Fire Protection, all of these elements have been woven into this code. So what I'd like to do tonight is, before I turn it over, just kind of take any questions, allow the administration to first of all speak to this, take any questions, and then what I'd like to do ultimately is place this on the agenda for a first reading, and then give it 3. At the end of the 3rd, if we have enough votes, to insert an emergency clause in it so we can begin to use this in the spring. We won't lose 30 days waiting for it to become effective. And again, this is if we have no significant objections. So with that introduction, Pat, let me turn it over to you.
Okay.
And for some comments.
Thank you. One of the things that kind of spurred this on is actually having been in this position now for 3 years, being with the city for 4, and taking a hands-on approach to every department that was involved in various types of code enforcement, whether it was fire department, police department, building department, permits department, administration, council, putting it all together and finding that basically what we had failed to work at some point in the past. We tried, the aggressive, approach. When I got in, just by sheer will, we could make this stuff happen. But in the end, the documents, the codes were not unified. So we had too many different approaches from a legal standpoint, standards that had to be met, processes to be followed that prevented us from ever really referring many cases, if any, to the city of Canton to deal with. And we have had this approach of, it's one way or the other. It's either criminal or it's civil, or it was civil and we changed it to criminal. And it requires a more nuanced approach. So we began the process of putting a team together and going through this with Marty. And I have to say, of all the components here, that this is such a huge advantage to have Safe built here and draw upon the experience that they have. We never would have been able to pull this together without that. It's like having an outside consultant on the inside. It's a great benefit to the city in that respect. But we also spoke with the Canton City Prosecutor's Office, the law department down there in this, worked with our legal counsel to set this up. So what we have is we've addressed all the various types of complaints that we feel that were out there. I appreciate all the members of council calling me, giving me things to work on over the last couple years to address. And I made detailed notes of that, and we've incorporated those changes into it. So we feel we have a very comprehensive set of code enforcements to apply. Again, we had nothing to apply to commercial property. Now we do. And we have a standardized process on how to address them. And it's not always coming down hard and at first and being the police on the block. It's a more nuanced approach to that. But what we want to do is, for every type of thing, we want to follow this process regardless of the nature of the violation. And we provide notice, we try to work with them, get them to agreement, a positive step first. But ultimately, if we have property owners that are resistant or are just unable to deal with it, then we have mechanisms in place to deal with it and to affect the change. And that's what it's all about. It's really just about keeping a curbside appeal to all of our properties. So we want to go out there in the spring and be able to really start this up and get going with it. In addition to that, we're doing some other things with sidewalks and gravel driveways, and we're going to be out there. So this will be a great opportunity to do that. So I appreciate council's indulgence and help in letting us have the latitude of getting this together in the right way and not just getting something haphazard put together. This is a very comprehensive approach. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Marty, do you have anything to add?
I do, thank you. And if you'd like, I can do a summary, high-level view of the changes, essentially.
That would be fine, Marty. Please go ahead, because we have people who are probably outside the council arena who may be interested. So go ahead.
Absolutely, thank you. So as you know, we've had a working draft before the committee. The last two times this is before the committee. We have sent this out for review within the departments and received any feedback and have incorporated those changes. Now there are some structural changes in the language. Effectively, it does the same thing. It's been streamlined, reformatted to be a little more user-friendly, and I think primarily and more importantly is to incorporate all of the nuisance types of violations into a single chapter. Often the nuisance officer, the code enforcement officer, is engaged by all various departments of the city, as well as numerous residents within the city to seeking relief from various violations. And with the separated nuisance violations as it is today, often it leaves the code enforcement officer where they're not able to help, as it falls under a section of the code that either they don't have the authority to follow up on it, or either may not be a good mechanism to enforce that particular code section. With this being a comprehensive approach, it would all fall under the similar types of remedies that we'll go over here in a minute. But it also makes the code enforcement officer more of a resource, and to be helpful. They're already set up to send out notices. They're already set up to go out and talk with folks and help walk them through the process and explain the codes and help achieve that voluntary compliance. So as we talked about previously, this code, we started with the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. It is a nationwide code that's used predominantly throughout the United States, as well as in Ohio. There are many jurisdictions within the state that have adopted this in one form or another. The other, as identified previously, one of the big changes with this is this does bring in a component to address any property maintenance concerns within commercial. We don't have that right now. This would apply to commercial and residential. As part of this, we're proposing to establish a property maintenance review board. This would be members from the community who their focus is on nuisance types of violations that typically are similar and have that community approach and that view that's needed to review these from a standpoint of the nuisance abatement process. Let's see, the additional enforcement tools that I mentioned, this does give a component for the civil penalties. It does provide for worst case scenarios where
Hello?
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
You broke up a little bit, Marty.
Okay, what was the last part we heard?
You were talking about the code and the enforcement by the citizens property maintenance review board.
Oh, okay. So the property maintenance review board, as it's proposed is a separate body that would review the nuisance abatement cases. Often, these cases are specific and unique to themselves that will have very similar types of violations, and they would review it specific to this chapter. Some of the additional enforcement tools that are incorporated with the proposed legislation is civil penalties, the abatement of the violations, and the worst case scenario where we're not getting any result with, our first approach is always voluntary compliance and any of the other tools. The abatement of the violations would permit the city to do the abatement of particular violations. It incorporates a notice of noncompliance, and where the notice of noncompliance is helpful, particularly is where work is done on a structure and they've not brought the work in violation up to current code with permits and inspections and maybe a safety hazard. This notice of noncompliance would be recorded with the recorder's office. So any prospective buyers would be made aware that there's outstanding or concerns with the property. We've clarified the criminal penalties on that as another tool. as well as clarify the legal remedies through the law department. One of the changes that we did make in the proposed language is in the vacant property registration. And again, this applies to not only residential as we have now, but it would also apply to commercial properties. And on page 67 of your packet, we have proposed a fee structure that we feel would incentivize the either rehabilitation of commercial and residential properties or just simply an occupancy of that, so we don't end up with as many of the vacant buildings. And again, we've incorporated the weed abatement into this. A new section was incorporated as well to address dangerous trees. In general, this code not only addresses the exterior, but also the interior of the structure as well. And lastly, the requirement here that's incorporated is for the clear polycarbonate sheathing when boarding of a building is required. Essentially prohibit any plywood, which in of itself would often does create an unsightly situation. And I'm here for any questions and happy to do so.
Okay, Marty, thank you very much. Before we come back to questions, Wayne's on as well from legal. Wayne, do you have anything to add regarding the legal process or enforcement? Maybe your thoughts on due process, etc.
Just to reiterate a couple things that Marty said, I think Marty covered a good portion of it, and so did Patrick. The biggest issue that I saw originally when we first started going through it was the inconsistency and, quite frankly, at times the contradictory nature that the ordinances had, where, you know, Ordinance A would say that you had to do this, but then Ordinance B would say that you had to do a completely different thing to comply. And so it was hard to reconcile the two. And I think what Marty did a very good job of in using some of the standard codes was basically getting to a situation where due process was met, where there were situations where certain notices had to be given to the landowners in relation to a lot of these non-compliant situations prior to things being recorded, and ultimately basically curing those issues that we had from perhaps the due process perspective, or from simply just not knowing necessarily what had to be done in certain situations where it was either unclear or silent from the way that everything was set up to begin with. So I think what this does a good job of, and again, it's gone through multiple iterations from our side of things. Marty and Ben have been good at kind of putting together our comments and making sure that everything's clear, but it establishes a clear process, if this is the situation, then you have to follow steps A, B, and C. And I think that's the key here, is just making sure that it's consistent and making sure that it's clear whose responsibility it is to perform, certain actions in order to put people on notice, for example, for nuisance situations. Give them notice, give them a chance to cure. If they don't cure, then we have the following, ability to remedy the situation or to establish liens on the property, things of that nature. So again, I think Marty summed it up very well, but ultimately, our job here from a legal perspective was to make it very clear of what process that needed to be followed and what the penalties were if that process was not followed.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go to questions. Does anybody have any for the administrative team?
A couple things. This is Sreda. I agree with Wayne, because sometimes it's very hard for people. We take a lot of pride in our city and residential and commercial upkeep. And so it's part of the charm of North Canton. But on the other side, and many times in the past, it makes it so hard and so user unfriendly for businesses and residents to do common sense remedies to things that because of the different rules and what they say, and they don't understand it. And so we hear that all the time from people. When we want to work with them, it's like North Canton's so hard to work for, and we don't want to hear that, but we still want to keep everything up to code and where we want it to be. So anytime, that you bring common sense things like this review council or the appeal board, so people can bring, things that they want to ask questions about, things that are kind of in between in the gray side. I think that's very useful to get what they want and get what we want as a city. So I commend you on all this kind of thing. And Wayne, thanks for going through that, because it is hard. I think our codes were in many ways a lot of jibber jabbers kind of thing. But one question I had for Marty, because he mentioned it, what kind of fee structure changes are we talking about? I think you mentioned that.
So the main fee structure that was changed was specific to the vacant building section, and it's a logarithmic scale that was incorporated. And essentially it starts out year one at a fee, and we've split that up appropriate for residential, commercial, and again, pointing back to the beginning of that section, I believe we'd exempted out anything under 1,000 square feet. So this is going to be larger structures essentially. And so on the residential, it's a flat rate per year, and it goes up every year. And with the commercial, it's a cost per square foot. And again, that cost per square foot goes up each year, and that starts out at year one at 5 cents per square foot, and year two is 7.5 cents per square foot, and goes up from there up to $1, 12.5 cents per square foot for the fifth and each subsequent year. And again, with in mind that we want to encourage buildings to be occupied and not left vacant for unsightly premises as well as attractive nuisances.
And Marty?
Yeah.
Dominic here. So a couple quick things I was just looking at when I was looking at the, it was probably the one from December 14th, rough draft. And some things may have been revised. I just kind of went through and looked at it myself, and I can always drop it off so you can look at it. But a couple quick things. So when you think of vacant buildings, let's say if you drive up and down Cleveland Avenue and you see commercial buildings that have been sitting there like Hoover's or anybody that's been sitting there for a long period of time. And, so do those apply or do those account for that? And then the other thing is with COVID, there's a paradigm shift happening as we speak in the next 12 or 24 months where I think you're going to see a little bit more struggles with the commercial department. And so if you penalize them, I think if someone can occupy a property, they would, unless this is specifically a dilapidated property type thing. So there'll be vacancies throughout the city, state, and country due to COVID. And I see that happening right now, mainly in commercial, not residential. And then the second question I had was, so like say in residential, so there's situations where, a house, let's say it's an estate or mom passed away, went to a nursing home, and sometimes older folks, they don't stay on top of it because they don't have the money, they're on fixed incomes. And there's probably some things that aren't, compliant to what they should be, right? And so instead of putting liens and recording issues with them, there are people that will buy those at a little bit of a discount and deal with all those things and bring it up to snuff. So like I saw there was a section in the paperwork that says that you guys can mandate them to escrow money into the title company, and then that the officer gives the authority if they can release the money or not. I feel that's overstepping. I feel that there's many cases, and like I said, from the real estate standpoint, I've seen this many, many times before, where if there's a meeting of the mind between the buyer and the seller, and many times the seller is in a nursing home, maybe doesn't have their wherewithal, and the administrator, the co-trustee, successor trustee is kind of dealing with that, and they don't have the wherewithal to do anything, and so now we're creating this bureaucracy. And so that's all I'm saying is I don't know what the intent was of it, as something probably we can talk about later. But that was just one of the things. And then the other thing is on the fee structures for penalties and so forth. I didn't know what the time frame was. Here's warning 1, warning 2, warning 3. I saw the the schedule of all the fees, but I didn't know if it's like 30 days type of thing. And those are things we can talk about later. I just wanted to throw them out.
Okay.
Marty, I think we
On
should
those
address
fees,
some of that.
Are those
Patrick?
fees, grandfathered in, or if something's been open for, something's been vacant now, let's say for 2 years, when we start this, does this start year one, or
Yep.
do we?
Starts year one.
Okay.
You got to register. You got to
But
get.
what about like say Hoover, for example, or
Yep,
just
it
like
applies to
Kmart
Hoover.
or anything?
Applies to
It's-
all of them. Applies
so
to
you're,
all.
so like say Kmart is an example. Like let's say it's been empty a year and it's like, I don't know, 70,000.
Did you read the list of exemptions?
I did, but I can't retain them all right at the moment. I was just saying,
If the property is actively being sold or supported by proof of listing on a multiple listing service
that's
or other
exempt.
similar form for the sale of property or proof of contract for realtor services.
Okay, then that would cover pretty much a lot of it.
Cover a lot of it.
Yep. Okay, that's why I wanted to ask. Those are a couple of things. The escrow thing popped out. I thought that was kind of a little off, but
Marty, do you want to hit the escrow thing?
Hey, Patrick, just before we
Yeah.
go on, just a second here. Let me point out that, at least in my memory, we've had two situations where it would have been great to have had something like this in place. The first was the long-standing Duke Station saga. That building stood there for years and years and years before somebody finally demoed it. And it would have been nice if we'd had some the ability to take more aggressive action. The second was the little property over on East Maple that we all applauded, the demolition. That property should have been addressed years and years and years ago. And I think we just never quite had the right tools for it. Now I think we do. And as I go around town, I can tell you, I can point to a couple properties that frankly are really ripe for the wrecking ball. So I think we've got a means, and again, as the law department said, we've got some exemptions. We have the means to exempt it. We have a process in place to consider facts, and that we should always keep that in mind, that we have an outlet, but we don't want to let a problem fester. Patrick?
Yeah, I think we can all go up and down various parts of the streets in town and look at a lot of properties that have been vacant for a very long time. And here's the thing. Vacancy costs the city. And I don't mean it costs the city in the sense that there's lost income tax revenue. I mean, it costs the city in its image. When you drive through, 40,000 cars a day on Main Street, and they drive by a vacant building that's been vacant for a decade, 2 decades, and there's no incentive for the property owner to do anything. The property's paid for. All they got to do is pay the taxes. Chances are, if it's vacant and run down, the taxes are low, and they can afford to just sit. But that reflects upon the city's efforts to do economic development, because somebody, coming into your community and looking at what's there, it doesn't create a very positive image. And so there is a cost to the city that we have to bear in mind. And I think this approach starts that process of, and there other communities have done this around Ohio. We wouldn't be the first to try to get, whether it's vacant land that that this applies to, or whether it's a building that it applies to. You have to try to be selling it, to listing it, to, that seems to be the intent, but not just sitting there, not doing anything for decades.
Well, you've got a perfect example of a property that has been a community eyesore, and that is the old Spitzer building. Literally, the building is in a state of decay, and it's at the center of town.
We have 2.
Yeah, but it bypasses these exemptions to the point where all they have to do is list it at twice as much like they do, and they're still going listed.
That's a good point, Mark.
But there was a decade there, Mark, where it wasn't listed at all.
Okay, well, that makes different sense. Yep.
Well,
I think the other thing is this: is that as we look at this, and again, I would defer to the lawyers, but if the property is is listed at an unreasonable amount, it's clear that the property owner is attempting to circumvent the ordinance, then I think we have a legal remedy.
Daryl, if the place is falling down and it's for sale, it could be addressed as a nuisance anyhow. You know what I'm saying? Thank
There
you.
you go.
But and one other thing, hit on the escrow if you can, and then I'm good for the rest of the meeting. Thanks.
Absolutely. So one thing to point out under the exemptions only apply if they are safe, secure, and in habitable conditions. So just listing it for sale, and if there's problems there, that doesn't escape them from any remedies to, in attempts to get the building back to a, usable and a function part of the community. Which leads me into the escrow. And the escrow applies, provided that it's not exempt, which, of course, if it was exempt, it would be safe, secure, and habitable. Then the escrow wouldn't apply in that case, because the escrow really applies when there are violations that have not been corrected as part of that inspection process, and they are seeking to sell or transfer the property. So the escrow is a way to secure and help ensure that the violations are going to be remedied through some sort of process, either through their own means. That's always the preference, of course, is again that voluntary compliance. But if they choose not to, then there's a function that would help ensure those corrections have been made, and limiting the loss to the community is, to one specific property.
And Marty,
go ahead.
Didn't we have discussions? We were, I think, concerned with, we see so many instances where a person buying the property doesn't know what is happening with the property, and the seller doesn't seem to be wanting to obligate themselves to tell the property owner what the problems are. And so I thought that this was kind of a means in which there could be some protections in place on the buyer side.
Could I address that?
You have an obligation to tell people if there is something about your property that's not in compliance, and you've been notified by it.
So here's kind of like my real life application, since I get to do this all the time. So in my opinion, the escrow wouldn't be the right approach. The right approach would be, now that we have a consistent cohesion here, that whenever a property is listed in the multiple listing service, there's got to be a paper that's an attachment to the multiple listing service. Like, say if it's like a trust, a foreclosure, then they're exempt from doing a residential disclosure form. But when it's an attachment to the multiple listing saying that in the city of North Canton, this home has to be inspected by blah, 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 whoever buys it. Because like I said, in many cases, you might have a seller selling that doesn't have the wherewithal, the mental capacity, or anything to deal with it. And a buyer would be willing to buy it and deal with it. But where the trick came in when we had problems a few years ago was that people really never understood that, what do you mean I have to do this? No one told me. So that's what you're talking about. But the way it should be now with the revisions of the codes is that all the agents are put on notice that if you have a house in the city and it meets these basic criteria, this is what you need to attach to the multiple listing service. So the buyer knows that, hey, as soon as you buy this, even though you're getting it at a discount, we have to do all these inspections and make sure it meets the safe standard in North Canton. That's how I would approach it. But when you get in the middle of escrowing and playing people's money, and it's just a little political and a little bit too overreaching in my personal and professional opinion.
Hey, any other questions or comments?
Oh, this is Troy. I've got a comment, and I just want to say I appreciate the sheer amount of work that is involved in this. That's a huge piece of legislation, and it's very detailed, so I appreciate that. I have a question about the Maintenance Review Board, and basically just what is your vision of how that would work? I'm reading on, I think it was page 80, about the developmental board. How do you see the organization of the maintenance review board working? And is it public? If you guys could walk me through that.
I envision it to be like any other board that we have, Matt, whether it's the Planning Commission, the ZBA, the Water Board, CRA, Housing Council, all open to the public, follow a standardized meeting process. Since they're kind of hearing potentially appeals, it would probably be structured by similar to like a ZBA. Possibly, we appoint people, they have terms, they hold a public meeting and hear from the property owner why they shouldn't be tagged with these violations. And
that makes sense.
We like that it's members of our community that
absolutely
that live here and get to see these properties and see what the violations and whatever, and be held accountable or not held accountable, but that's the intent. I'm not sure if that helps you.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Yep.
And I think also, Matt, because I'm involved in the water board, people sometimes don't understand, and they come to the water board and they explain it to them, and they sometimes they go away understanding whether they're mad or not, and at least they can have another review for those artful. Because like Pat said, there are community people. They deserve some type of explanation, and if it's something they don't agree with, if they want it reviewed, that's a good thing to do.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I think that's great.
All right. Is there anybody else who wishes to add something on this matter?
I do, Daryl, Mayor Wilder.
Go ahead.
Listening to the conversation, very, very informative. I think, again, Dom talked about it. We're entering a paradigm shift with the work that we've done in the past. Change is progress, and I think we're making a good change here. And I think what you've all talked about is accountability on our part and also on the people that we'll be working with. And, with Mark's comments too, and everybody about having a voice that the people can learn how we can work together on something. And again, with the Law Director Boyer's comments, it's going to bring consistency, and Marty is bringing that consistency for us. So I think it's just another step as we try to become better, business friendly, but also being equal and in what we do for our citizens. Just my general comment. Thank you.
If I might just, this is Revolt, add one sort of footnote to the mayor's comment. And I've said this before, I think we should never be afraid to try something, and understand that if we stay on top of it and we listen to our constituents, in this case, we're going to have a property review board, maintenance review board. We listen carefully. We can make corrections as we go along. And again, I think the overall good is something that we ought to pursue. And but again, be like any project, you monitor its progress and you make corrections and remedies as time passes. So I'm pretty comfortable with where we are. If we can, then are we all in agreement to give this a first reading next Monday?
Absolutely.
Do you want a motion? Let me have I'll make a motion on this. I'll move that we put this on the agenda for Monday.
Both seconds.
Daryl, let me clarify. This is items 3A through.
No, this is just 3A.
Oh, just 3A. Okay.
Just
we have
3A.
a motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Okay. Now let's go on to 3B. What we've got is an ordinance establishing the Department of Development Services. Basically, this is a reorg, and Pat, I'm going to have you, if I don't have this exactly right, but it's restructuring the permits and inspection to put the Director of Administration at the top. But beneath him is the Director of Permits, and below that are 4 operating divisions: building, permits, planning and zoning, and maintenance code enforcement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and this is one of the tools that we're going to have to make this property code work. Are there any questions about this? Or Pat, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, any questions?
Sreta, is this going to require more people being added?
It should not. At least I don't think. Pat?
But not at this time. I don't envision it. There'll be some other things that we bring down the road that will require bodies, but this ain't one of them.
Okay. Mark, follow up?
Nope.
Okay. I'll make a motion. We place this on the agenda for a Monday night, first reading. Do we have a second?
Wait a second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Hey. Okay, we're on a roll here, gentlemen. Now, we've already discussed the Property Maintenance Review Board. Ben, you want to pull it up real quick? This is the 5-member body that's appointed by the mayor, staggered terms, comprised of citizens that'll be responsible for the administration and the appeals of the property maintenance regulations. Pat, anything to add?
No, sir.
Council, any questions?
No, good idea.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we place this on the agenda for first reading Monday night.
Bolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Perfect. Okay, and here's the one technical change. We're going to make a modification in the Department of Engineering and move permits and inspections over to the Department of Development Services. And again, this is just a restructural requirement to align our code. Are there any, Pat, do you have anything to add?
No.
All right. Council, any questions?
Nope.
I think I have one comment. I think if you look at what they're trying to do, and we've seen this to date with some of the other changes, we're trying to make sure we've got clear command and control that extends from the departments up through the director of administration, so that the administrator clearly understands what's occurring inside the city and is in a position to address it. Is that a fair representation, Pat?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So that way nobody can say, well, it didn't get up to Pat, or Pat gets surprised. He's going to know, or the administrator will know what's happening. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we put item 3D on the agenda for first reading Monday night. We have a second?
Bolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, now you should have in your packet, marked page 86, a cheat sheet for items 3E through 3J. These are amendments where we're removing some of our existing nuisance language from certain sections of our codified ordinances, and we're putting them in the new maintenance code. And you'll see there's a nice, neat little summary right there. I don't think we necessarily need to walk through all of these, but we've got Marty and we've got Pat, so if you have any questions, we can do it. But these are this is just housekeeping. We're moving it from one location to another. And this really goes to what Mark was saying about being customer friendly. This will all be in one place.
I got a quick question. What's with the live chickens? Can I have live chickens?
Of course you can.
And is fowl not an animal?
I'll tell you, I've been to a lot of meetings where there have been foul questions, but this is one of them.
Touche.
I won't use a phrase to characterize that question beyond foul.
I always laugh at, why do we use the word rubbish? That's an English word.
That's another good
You
one.
just use
That's a good.
trash.
I think it has to do with the legal definition, actually.
Yeah.
Mark.
It's funny.
Because I think what you have is you have garbage and rubbish. I don't know.
Yeah, it stems from our ordinances, legal definitions, our service contract on what is rubbish, what is garbage.
Okay. Mr. President, it doesn't appear if there are any questions or comments about items 3E through 3J. So I would make a motion that we take these as a body and have them placed individually on the agenda for individual action Monday night.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
Both seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The Tax Incentive Review Group met last week. We have two CRA agreements to approve. The first, item 3K, was for 331 Harmon. It was found to be compliant with the CRA ordinance. Are there any questions about that?
So everybody knows it's the last year for this.
That is correct. Thank you, Mark. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, then I'll move that we place this on the agenda for approval on emergency.
Shredder seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3J is the CRA tax incentive.
Or L.
Pardon?
L, you said J.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3L, yeah, old eyes. I'm still laughing about foul. 3L is an ordinance on an emergency basis to approve the tax incentive agreement between the City of North Canton and 1303, 1305 North Main Street. This is Northridge. The property was found to be compliant. It's a recommendation of the board that this be approved. Pat, do you have anything, or Mark?
No.
We apologize for the emergency nature of it. It's beyond our control. We're dependent upon information that we get from the county when they make that available. And then there's a hard deadline of when we have to get this down and turned into the state of Ohio and then work it through city council. And there's just no way to do it that it's not on an emergency. So I just like to say that every year, because sometimes you get, council gets grief from those.
Pat, it should just say,
emergencies.
Hey, Pat, instead of an emergency, it should say COVID. That's kind of like the live chicken joke.
It sounded like a location joke, and maybe you should go there and tell it.
All right, listen, before we get ourselves into real trouble here, I'm going to make a motion that we place this on the agenda for emergency consideration Monday night. Is there a second?
Both seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries.
Now, let's make the church happy. We had the public hearing. We have a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission that the outlot on which the former parsonage was established be separated and zoned R50. This is a zone change again from park and institutional to residential R50. We heard no opposition this evening, and I don't believe there was any at the Planning Commission, if my memory serves me right. Is there any discussion? And this brings the property into legal compliance under its current use as a rental. If there is, pardon?
Common sense. No, this is all good.
Yeah, common sense, housekeeping. I'm going to move that we place this on the agenda for a first reading Monday night.
Both
Can I have a
seconds.
second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Daryl. And I'll echo Matt's comments. Daryl, thank you for all your hard work. Marty, Pat, everyone, well done. Okay, moving on to ordinance rules. committee. Chairman Stroya, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. This is all the way down on page 135. So previously we talked about looking at the charter and potentially making some changes. It ends up being, it's a little bit more tedious than what we thought. Ben, if you want to weigh in here, and then we can have a discussion on whether we want to proceed or not.
Yeah, so in talking to legal counsel about the best language for the amendments that you all had identified, they also reviewed the amendment process that's outlined in the Ohio Constitution. And if I botch this, Wayne, you're welcome to jump in and correct me. But it is their understanding and their belief that it would require not just a single election on the issue of the amendment itself, but additional elections to first put the question to the voters, do we want to elect a commission to look at amending the charter? So that's election one. Then election two would be actually electing the members of that commission amendment charter, or charter amendment commission, sorry. And then election three would finally be the actual amendments. So this could be a 2+ year process to do this, not during our regularly scheduled 10-year charter reviews. That being said, the most important amendment we discussed, the power for the Director of Finance to make year-end appropriations, we do believe that we can still achieve, as long as we get into the habit of, at the end of every October, passing a non-emergency ordinance granting that power.
Until we get to the charter review, next charter review commission.
Correct.
Okay.
So if 3 elections over 2 years is too difficult, then we do believe, at least for that one, we have a workaround.
Yeah, I think that's a great remedy instead of going through all that for the public. So I support that. It's false.
I agree, Doug. I just think it's too tedious.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, Matt, this is Daryl.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I think is we look at some of our discussions over the last year or so, particularly with Ben serving as clerk, and you know, I think we all recognize, for example, we all recognize that there are certain deficiencies. We're dealing with a charter that was written in a much simpler time, and it also didn't anticipate things like email and the delivery of a packet electronically. I think if we wait till the next Charter Review Commission, obviously work around the finance issue, but I would challenge the council and legal counsel and the clerk to look at sections of the charter, and when that Charter Review Commission comes up, and I know that commission will have some of its own ideas, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had some sections of the charter already drafted for consideration. In other words, we've taken a look over the last 10-year period and said, hey, these are areas we think we should change. Here are the reasons. Charter Review Commission, here's the language. What do you think? And I think we would get a more meaningful charter review process if we did that. It's not that we're going to force it on somebody, but it's the fact that we have the time, we've taken the time over the next period of many, many months to look at those sections of the charter that might be improved. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Daryl. I mean, we should start now. I mean, very few, if any of us, will be around in 2027. I don't mean physically. I mean on on council.
Thank-
Maybe
thank
Matt's
you.
young enough to do that, but
I was like, geez, Mark, that's a little harsh.
but we should be
I agree.
We should be writing stuff down and putting things into place so they're ready to roll and look at why we're doing that, because it'll be a whole new world even at that point than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So maybe
Absolutely.
someone, Ben or whatever, can take on. Maybe we need like some sort of document that's will be then forwarded to the charter commission. We can call it something of specific ideas for changing our community.
Yeah, and here's Mark. This is Daryl. You've really touched on something, and that is, how do you convey institutional knowledge? A lot of us may be gone by the time this thing rolls around. So how do we utilize that experience? And I think having Ben start a file, work on some language, again, it may go nowhere, it may go somewhere, but the point is, that might save a new clerk, a new council, a new administration a lot of headaches if there's something already there that they can work on.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
points, everybody. And
Well,
then maybe we can start a file on Granicus on something like that and make sure it's carried forward.
Okay.
A memo. Let's get them on.
Yep. Anybody else?
Nope.
Nope.
Then I
right.
motion to table this then.
I'll second it. Revolt seconds.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, personnel and safety. We've created the North Canton Volunteer Firefighters Dependents Fund Board. It is now upon us to appoint 2 council representatives. It can be anyone, but there needs to be at least 2. I would recommend that we appoint the clerk and the director of finance. So after that recommendation, what I'll do, I'll open the floor now to nominations. If anyone has any other nominations, or if you want to go with those 2.
How many do we need?
We need 2.
Oh, and you already have those 2?
No, I'm recommending that we appoint the council clerk and the director of finance as the council appointees.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Discussion?
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, and I'll second it if there isn't any additional discussion.
Great idea.
Should I do a voice vote for each one, Ben, or can I do it for both as one?
Since there are no other nominations, you can do it for both as one, but we do need on the record each council member to state who they are voting for.
Oh, so instead of a voice vote, a roll call with the names.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Ben, if you want to call an individual roll for each council member to state the names they wish to be the appointee.
Can we just make a motion with both the positions and then we all vote on it? In a roll?
So, under the chapter of the Ohio Revised Code that governs this board, it has to be treated as an election, not as a motion.
Okay.
I see.
So you have to elect your 2 nominees.
All right, let's get on with it then.
Okay. Well, if there are no other nominations, clerk, please call the vote by roll call. And each council member will vote for two positions. I would recommend not by name, but by position,
Okay.
i.e. council clerk, director of finance.
Right.
Member
All right,
Peters?
Ben, you want to call it?
Member Peters?
Okay, council clerk and director of finance.
Member Stroyo?
Councilor Clerk and Director of Finance.
Member Revolt?
Revolt votes for the clerk of council and the director of finance.
Member Warren,
Member Warren votes for clerk of council and director of finance.
Member Foltz,
Member Foltz votes for clerk of council and director of finance.
Member Sreda,
Sreda votes for clerk of courts and director of finance.
Clerk of council.
Clerk of council. He did get raised, didn't he? So, clerk of council and director of finance for Sreda.
He's not clerk of courts yet, Mark.
Yeah, there soon.
Member Fonte,
Fonte votes for the clerk of, I don't want to say courts, but clerk of council and director of finance.
the clerk of council and the director of finance have both received 7 votes.
All right, and both hereby appointed.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to both of them.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, now moving on.
Hey, Jeff,
yeah,
on
I'm
this
sorry.
next one, I have a question procedurally.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right, it's probably just an old school thing, but so in this title of the ordinance or whatever here that we're reading, it doesn't say through the Board of Control, authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton through the Board of Control. I know it's in the body.
Yeah.
But I like it when it's in the title and the body. Didn't know if somebody wanted to.
Hold on. I think we're going to do something right here.
No, legal counsel in their review did catch that I forgot that phrase. I forgot to correct it on the agenda. That's my fault.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Patrick. Are you going to go ahead and do that right now, Ben? Or do you want me to move on?
It is in the current draft.
I got you. Okay.
Just on the agenda, it's wrong.
Right on. Okay. All right. So as Patrick stated, Board of Control did receive bids, and now we are authorizing the mayor through the Board of Control for the installation of the exhaust venting system at a cost not to exceed $110,000. Any questions for Patrick on this one?
Pat, that's the 90% grant, 10% we pay. Is that it?
That's the one that you recalled me around earlier today about what Plain Township had done, and yeah, we're on the same path as they are.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's no other questions, is there a motion and a second to recommend this item out of committee?
Warren moves.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, moving on. Water, sewer, and rubbish. Chairman Sreda.
Rubbish. Well, this is all new to me, to be honest. This came up this week. No one's ever talked to me about this, so I'm going to let the administration, who did not communicate any of this to me, what this is all about. So go ahead.
Well, thank you for that introduction. It would suffice to say that we've talked a couple of times on things, and when it gets on your committee, you could always call. I just assumed that if you had a question, you'd give me a call. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak because we have been working on this. We know that a rate study for both sewer and water had to be done. It hadn't been done for some period of time. We were past the point of the last time we did it. I believe was in 2013. We had a 5-year plan. So this should have been done a couple years ago. We've had some changeover in personnel. We had a COVID, and in spite of that all, Gina and myself, Mark Lighthammer, Brian Hill have worked to get the consultant to finish this work in progress, wrap it up, and get something to City Council March 1st. So the rate study was done by Bob McNutt, who's been with our city in assessing our capabilities and needs for decades. Included in this study is an analysis of what is our operating costs, how much does it cost to just turn on the lights and get the water going, treat it, and then also our capital improvement needs. So whether we're replacing some water lines and sanitary sewer lines, that's all incorporated into this study. So what we've come up with is another 5-year plan, and establishing the rates increases to cover those 5 years. So in years 1 through 3, the rate study suggests a 5% increase, and in years 4 and 5, a 3% increase. Now, one of the things that's different from the last time this was done in 2013 is that there's a new requirement, governmental requirement, that makes municipalities that are in the water business perform an asset management study, to have an asset management plan, to actually think about the things that you need to replace over time if you are in the water business, and not just get caught off guard with sudden expenditures that could lead to erratic rates. So we completed that process in 2020, and every 3 years we have to do that. So in 2023, the administration, along with the water treatment plant, the engineer's office, will get together with the consultants, and we'll conduct another asset management plan update. And with that update, we will bring that back to City Council then to see if there is any adjustment that needs to be made to the rates, up or down. So we like the idea that there's a 5-year plan, but there's an automated process that in 3 years, or in essence now 2023, that this will come back to City Council with a recommendation on the asset plan that, hey, this is what's happened in the last few years. Are you on track or not on track? And adjusting accordingly. The City of Canton just did theirs last week. They opted to do just a 3-year plan, and their rates were increases of 7, 7, and 5. So ours is 5, 5, 5, 3, 3, with the provision to bring that back. That's on the water side. So on the sewer side, we were just addressing the portion that is the City of North Canton bill. Now, as you all recall, and the community will as well, when you get your bill through the city, it's broken out on the sewer that there's North Canton sewer, Stark County sewer, Canton City sewer. There's 3 components to that. We do not have any control over the Stark County portion and the Canton City portion. And we have no idea what their plans are regarding future contracts. We do know that with the City of Canton, we've had a 45-year agreement with them, and that is scheduled to expire this year. And we are in discussions with them on renewing that for some other period of time. We know that we've had some amendments come through the City Council in the last few years from the City of Canton regarding the sewer, with needed upgrades that they were seeking, and that there was a partial sharing of all contributors of sanitary waste to their system. Everybody had to pay a little bit more, so we've adjusted that. So what we're talking about is just on the North Canton rate side, and we're recommending $1 per month increase. It was $1 or $1.05, Gina. What was it?
$1.05.
$1.05. My bad. So $1.05 per month increased to the North Canton sewer portion of that bill, and that would also be over cover the 5-year period. Now, we also are saying that we would seek to have these rates go into effect January 1st, 2022, and then run through calendar year 2026, so that everybody will have plenty of time to adjust and forecast where they need to be for these new rates. They're very, very modest in comparison. So that kind of covers on the water and sewer as far as the rates go. Then there were some additional changes to various parts of this that we've come across that we're seeking redress on. So one is with a fee that the city charges when your water is shut off for non-payment or non-compliance, and then you seek to have it turned back on. So of course, you have to pay all the back water bills that you have and what you owe, and any late fees that come with that. But in the past couple of years here, we've had a water turn on fee. We changed it a couple years back from $50 to $100. That's what it is presently. And we thought that this might have some sort of deterrent effect on those that, hey, this, don't want to let that happen again. I got my water shut off. It cost me an extra $100. In practice, we have found that it has not been a deterrent. What it has been is a source of violent outbursts by individuals who, beyond their control, are in a set of circumstances that they just can't keep up with their bills. Now, we did make a change that has been helpful to the city to mitigate our costs. We did that 2 years ago when we increased the fee from 50 to 100. And that was that we will turn your water back on during regular business hours, 8 to 4:30. Previously, we were sending people out on overtime. If somebody came in and paid at 4:25, our crews go home at 3:30, and we call them back out, minimum call out overtime to go out and handle that. We were losing money on that deal. So we changed it to just be 8 to 4:30. So your water would get turned back on the next day. If you come in early enough in the day, we can get it that day. But once people go home, we're not going to call them back out. That seems to be working very well. People have accepted that. So we would like to, working with finance here, we would like to eliminate that turn on fee of $100. So that is another part of this proposal. And then also, another thing that we came across that isn't working right has to do with some changes that were made back in 2008. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the backdrop on that, but so bear with me. Back in 2007, the state of Ohio had a program called the Homestead Act, and certain residents throughout Ohio could apply for a homestead exemption and get a reduction on their property taxes. And at the end of 2007, going into 2008, the state of Ohio changed the requirement of eligibility and eliminated the income threshold. So now it was just an age threshold. And our language and our local ordinances at the time mirrored what the state had done. And in discussions back then in city council and the administration, is that we couldn't follow that example because roughly being an elderly community, for the most part, top 10 retirement city in Ohio, there would be too many people that would be eligible for a 50% reduction. So the city council at that time instituted a local change and put on an income threshold that you had to be below $27,000 in income and age 62 and live in an owner-occupied home to be eligible for eligible for a 50% reduction in water. There was apparently some confusion with the law directors at the time in writing the language, and it was the intent of the city to have it apply to water, but it appears that in some portions of the ordinances it was set to apply to sewer as well, although that never had happened in the ensuing years, just on the water. Unfortunately, in 2008, that was probably the last time that City Council ever had to deal with this. And I can tell you from working with the finance department now that in that period of time, there has been no vetting as to who is applying and whether they qualify. So there are approximately 113 individuals that are on this program, but we have no idea whether they qualify or not. They should have to qualify on an annual basis to determine whether or not they should be given that exemption. And I, with Gina, worked on just pulling one of the last applications for the exemption to be brought forward and applied. It was applied. And that illustrates part of the problem. There's no process. It shouldn't be left to the client coordinators to decide whether or not to apply. There should be a process in place if we're doing that, where it goes to a board. It could be the water board. And these all would have to be individually ascertained. The one that we looked at raised a number of red flags. One, documentation that attributed to income didn't demonstrate what their income was. Their forms were left blank. Left us to chase an email address that turned out to be a business that is operating out of an apartment building in the city. Problem there. This one should not have been approved, but the process had been that whatever got sent into the city was just approved and put in a file. So we're recommending that we remove this program. It is not by any stretch of the imagination even minimally used. At 7,800 customers, roughly 110 are taking advantage of it, but we don't know how many are legit. And to go through the process of reaching out to these folks to get their demonstrate their proof of eligibility on an annual basis, to me is tantamount to doing a CRA or a Turk. But instead of only dealing with 2, we're dealing with 113 until we could sort it out and get down to what properly qualifies. I'm not sure that we really have the personnel available to be able to handle that on an ongoing basis, given what I see in having to do the lift with the CRA, the Turk, and other boards like that. So it was our recommendation that we, come 2022, that we not have that program in place. Gina, did I miss some things there that I went over?
There were just 2 other pieces that we talked about relating to, there's a section in the current rate ordinance that relates to commercial customers having 2 or more locations in the city. And they have a reduction. Again, they have to prove certain incomes and number of employees. And we currently don't have any participants in that program. And it would be another one that we would either need a board to review or have a process in place, but we couldn't find in the history of the city where we had a participant in that section. So we're just asking to remove section H under 937. And the other, 937.02, we are requesting to increase the late penalty from 5% to 10% on all of the utility bills. And that goes back to the asset management plan and how that is, we're using that as a tool, and the prompt paying from customers is what is funding the plan. And so it's very important for us to be able, and we have so many ways for people to pay online, ACH. There's so many different ways to pay their bill now besides the U.S. mail. That prompt payment is really built into trying to establish those carryovers and build that plan around the EPA's asset management plan. So the funding for that, the immediacy of the funding for paying your bills on time, we thought that a 5% penalty was maybe not adequate. That was a very old rate as well. And so we'd like to increase that to 10%. The special water rates, I just want to touch on that one more time for the homestead program. We found that it was saving enrollees about $5 a month. So I'm not sure that that's going to be substantial for them either on their total bill, but I just wanted to quantify that program.
And Gina, one other one that I think we should touch on too is that we're establishing the rate for the bulk water rate for our new what do we call that station?
The new filling station with the credit card. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that we got through last year with some of the COVID dollars, I believe. So it's touchless. It doesn't involve the city having to be involved with it, manning it, hooking it up. It's just kind of like a filling station you go to, but we established a rate for that. They pay with their credit card.
Okay, anything else? Very thorough.
I'm good.
Questions from folks?
Mark, I have a couple comments if I could.
Bring it on.
First of all, Patrick, to eliminating the $100 fee to reestablish water to a customer that's had their water turned off, having that removed, I would agree with that, because I think if you're getting to the point where your water's being turned off, something horrible has happened, and I don't think a $100 penalty really does anything, like you said.
Yeah,
putting salt in a wound.
Yeah, exactly. But to that point, and Gina, this is to you. Historically speaking, the late payment penalty, what percentage are we seeing in late payments where they're paying the 5%, and what would the difference be if we move that to 10%? Is that going to make that much of a difference?
So it isn't, but the late penalty is even if they make a payment past the due date, but that still is 10 days or 15 days before the shutoff date. So the penalty is just truly to incur, and that's where I agree with you on the shutoff penalty. It feels like it's a penalty on top of a penalty because we already have a late penalty, but now we're going to charge you another. And I believe that $100 or $50 was to cover the overtime costs, which we just don't have anymore. Right. So the 5% to 5% is just very low on the penalty, just to be, pay on time or be late. So I don't have. That varies every single month, honestly. And we do seem to have more and more and more people every single month that are paying via ACH or online check or on our website. So, but again, it's either if they have it set up as automatic, then it will never, ever be late. Or if they're going in and paying every month themselves, it could vary. So I don't have a good steady number to give you on that. As far as the $100 turnoff fee, we average around 25 a month accounts that we're turning off. I would say 25 to 30. So we realize that will be a loss, but again, the asset management plan is not built on penalties. It's built on current payments. So the more we can encourage current payments, we don't need to collect the penalties.
Okay.
Hence is the 10% to be the incentive pay on time.
Yep.
Correct.
I got you. Okay.
A little trade-off.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good to me.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Okay, so let me ask something about the water rates here. Don't we have right now, in effect, an increase in water rates based on like a rate adjustment, market rate adjustment?
No.
I believe that there was an ordinance in place in 17 and 18, I believe, as far as a CPI increase for those 2 years.
Oh,
That was part of the 2013 rate study and program that was put into place with that ordinance that went for 5 years.
Right.
So
Okay.
the automatic increase was only for years 2016 and 2017.
Okay. And
The last water rate increase was June 1st of 17.
all right. And have we compared these rates that these are given us to other communities?
No, we don't compare to other communities. We compare to what it takes to run our system.
Okay.
That's what, the purpose of the asset management plan is in our operating expenses, to know what it takes to operate our system. I gave you as a comparison what the city of Canton did, just, kind of as information, but it's really based on what our rates are, what's it take to operate our system.
And Pat, this is Stephanie. I think, gosh, I remember us talking about this. I think it was before Christmas, and we said it was such a plan for next year, or maybe we were talking about in January. And the work that you have put into this, and Gina and everybody, is so extensive. And I think you said it perfectly. It's about what it takes to run our system. It doesn't matter what the other communities are doing. And we've been low, and we've been taking monies from other areas to help fund it. And we're finally on the right path. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would say if you studied the city of Canton's rate structure over the last 20 years, you would see multiple time periods where it was zero. And they fell it, the governmental process is structured in a way that if you don't stay on top of it, you're going to find yourself where we are now, where we have 2 years where we had no increase, and we've been having to absorb that. And then when you do go do the rate study, then you have to charge a little more because you haven't been charging it right for the last couple of years. It's an inherent problem, and we're hoping now that with the new processes that we put in place, that we're always able to get this back to City Council in advance of when the legislation would expire, not in the year that it expires.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, our constituents have to wonder why it hasn't been increasing.
Yeah.
Every other bill that they have received has gone up. And I think we all just say, well, the costs have gone up, and I think this just was a miss. So good job.
Yeah, good job, guys. This is Foltz. Yeah, as a follow-up, I always thought whenever we get charged additional costs from other water system, in this case, water pollution or sewer, we should have always passed those on, and that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it just makes sense. We're not controlling those costs. We don't control the sewer. We can't control the water. So, it makes sense that there's a study now and continue to increase that. So we have money set aside for rebuilding our sewers and taking care of, our needs with our departments. And then correct me if I'm wrong, did we say that we haven't had a water rate increase since 17?
That's correct.
Okay, so this will be a 4-year wait before a water increase, right? 18, 19, 20, 21. So I don't think anybody can really complain, a constituent, when it's been that long, and it should have been earlier. Obviously, Stephanie, your point. Yeah. But good discussion for everybody. We don't want to raise rates, and I think it's fair that we do it on a gradual basis and a catch-up, which always seems to be a negative with everybody. If it's small incremental increases yearly, that's the way we should always look at things. Or if we have other costs that we have to pass on from other government entities.
I think that's where the COLA came from. But like Pat said, we're not trying to kill it. We're, people pay taxes that live in our city.
And we want to maintaining costs.
Well, we want to make sure we provide the best quality service at the least, the most affordable price, but we also are running, a production that has to sustain itself. We can't be in the hole to run the entity, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it goes also that it should be said that what the finance director, with her great lead here, and she provides tremendous amount of experience and wisdom here, and in helping us all get to where we need to go. But for instance, I can remember serving on a time on city council, and those of you that have been around, back in my era will remember that a lot of our projects in the water and the sewer, we took on debt to pay for it because we didn't have any money. It was being run that inappropriately. And what we're saying now is with this rate study is, you know what? We need to build in some carry forward that when there's an emergency that happens, like we had that 20-inch cement water line break 2 years ago and the city of Canton had to come up and help us. That was a tremendous hit to the budget that, you know, we didn't save any money. I mean, it'd be nice to have some money saved to take care of a contingency like that you don't have to rush out and get a loan right away to take care of it. One. Two is that we would like to, going forward, all of our water line or sewer line projects be in a position that we're paying cash and not having to go and finance those things. So that's what this rate structure brings us as well.
Right. I agree, Pat. This is Foltz. And the other thing too, we've forgotten that if we don't raise our rates, the outside users aren't getting their rates increased either. And that's who should be paying more than anybody because they're using our infrastructure to have water. I realize all that. And there's a whole history, and I've gone over it the last 25 years. But, you know, that's important to me that they pay, everybody outside the city pays their fair share too, because they're on a city infrastructure program, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I agree.
President Peters.
Yes, sir.
For the council. What plan do we have for the 113 individuals? Do we let that run out, do you think, through the end of the year and then let them approach us because they see a rate change? Or I'm going to ask that elephant in the room here, that question. What do you think?
Is that what you're calling me now, an elephant?
No. That's the elephant in the room.
I'm really going downhill tonight.
Yes, you are.
That elephant lost a lot of weight.
From the record.
No, we intend to notify them. You know, it would be my intent that we let it run through the end of the year, but then we notify them.
Yeah. That's what your ordinance says.
What's happening?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, just wanted the public to hear that. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
No elephants.
So anybody else? Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, so we covered a good discussion here. Covered a lot of things. We covered water rate. We covered the turnoff fee of $100. We talked about that homestead program. Talked about the penalty of payment, 5 to 10%, and then establishing a bulk rate. So when you look at this ordinance, it looks like the federal stimulus plan here. We got so much stuff. Should we be breaking this up, or is this all one big, huge thing?
Ben, you want to jump in here? Because we talked about this, that it made sense since it was all tied together that we could, rather than pass separate ordinances for every one of these things, is that we just tie it all together in one ordinance. And I think that was what we had last discussed, and that's why we have it set up this way.
Yeah,
one other quick thing.
Our charter sets a limit that our ordinances may only discuss one topic. So typically what happens is that when we amend multiple portions of the code at once, so for example, earlier tonight we talked about the property maintenance code, and then there were quite a few fixes that went along with that. They're each their own ordinance because they're in different places. But because the sewer and water rates are both all kept in Title III of Part 9, they are close enough together that we can do them all as one, instead of having to break it up into, oh, we're doing this part of the code over here and this part of the code over here.
Hey, Ben, so like in just like speaking English here, like I see you got a sewer rate, you got an increase, you got a late fee, you got this, that. But when you shake it all out, if my bills say $70 a month for water, sewer, and trash, what am I looking at the increase this year? Do I just take 5% times 70? So raise it $30 or $3 or what?
You have your bill is, you have four things on your bill, Don. You have the water portion, then you have the North Canton sewer, the county sewer, and the city of Canton sewer. All right, so if you're telling me that all four of those things add up to $70, right?
Right.
I'm telling you that the North Canton portion, you're gonna have to add $1.05. So add $1.05.
Okay, so that's the easiest way to think of it, is like $1.05 is what we're talking about here.
And on your water, whatever that number is out of the 70, I don't know, you might use a lot of water because you do a lot of gardening. But 5% would apply to that water.
An average water customer uses about 6,000 gallons a month, which is
What's
going to
that
be.
mean?
I'm sorry?
Magic wand. Money?
Which means it's about $1.67 more a month.
See, look at that. You guys are on the same page. I love it.
I was ready for you,
A cup
Dom.
of coffee at McDonald's.
Keep in mind, that's just for water. When you start adding up the sewer and the Canton and the Stark, and people look at their bill, it's not going to be $70, Don. And
Well,
if you
that's
look
kind
at
of what
this
I'm trying to understand.
over
is what
5
does it-
years, this is a 20% increase over 5 years.
Well, that's kind of what I need to know. Like, well, I want to know every
It's
month.
just in water.
But I'm saying, like, this is the example I'm saying. Like, my bills, I don't know what it is. It's probably $90, but let's just say it's $70. That's probably the average person in town. I got a bunch of people still. So let's say, would I be seeing a $5 increase based on all of those things? But I know we don't know what Canton City's going to do, or the sewer, for the Stark County. They get their cut, or commissioned, or whoever gets it. I'm just curious. Is it like a $5 increase?
Well, we're
You
just
know,
a
to my
pass
bill?
through for the county and the city and Ken.
Right. I'm just curious if anybody even knows. Gina, maybe you would know. Are we expecting about a $5
So,
increase?
Dominic, if you have a water bill of $70 right now,
Correct.
$3.50.
then next year, that's going to equal
$73.50.
$73.50.
Okay, gotcha.
And
Just
then,
in water.
So by 2026, not accounting for correcting my rounding, as Gina has warned me before, you'll be paying roughly $89 by year 2026.
Okay, so that is going up a bit.
So
Mm-hmm.
it'll
Okay,
go
so to
up
answer my question
$19 over 5 years.
Is that 3 5s and 2 5 5 5 3 3, Ben?
Oh no,
Or
you're
are they
right.
still 5?
We went 5, 5, 5 for the 5.
Thank God Gina's on board.
Hey, Gina, real quick, we don't have an ordinance anymore, but what are we limited to charge the outside rates for water? Are
The
we limited
outside
by
rates
a statute or something?
Yeah, they're included in the same ordinance. Those fees are listed on there as well. Right
Yeah.
now, it equates to a 1.88 ratio. It's not a 2 times. Most
Okay.
entities I see is 2 times, but it's a 1.88 ratio. But we do list those for you as well, and we're just applying the same percentage increase.
So in 5 years,
Okay.
$15 on water alone. Okay.
Yeah.
Nope.
Gina, my question is though, are we limited to a certain amount? Can we go up to 2? Can we go up to 2.5 if we wanted to consider it for outside
Yes,
rate?
as far as I know right now, we are not limited. I know there's legislation on the floor that, we're not to charge outside users any more than inside, but that's been ongoing for a couple of years now. So right now we charge what we charge.
Yeah, I think if you're in the city paying income tax, you should get a teeny break compared to the outside people using a lot of our amenities and roads, even though
Well, absolutely, Don. That's my point.
I agree with you.
Without the cities, you wouldn't have water.
Yeah, I don't mean to abuse them. I mean, whatever's a fair amount.
No.
And maybe that's something we should discuss.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so to answer my question there, we're going to put this all in the same ordinance. Let's make sure that we make note of that so everybody understands what we're voting for.
Yep.
And any other questions? If not, then I'll make a motion to put this on for 3 readings.
Revolt seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our agenda for this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Revolt moves.
Destroy a second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Be safe.
Motion carries. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.